I'm Rebecca Taylor, 32, a financial analyst in Chicago who spent 3 years bankrolling my younger brother's entire life. Over $65,000 disappeared from my savings before I finally said enough. My parents' response? They called me stingy. Can you believe it? After all that money, all that support, they had the nerve to label me the villain. But when I stopped paying, they encountered a harsh reality they couldn't ignore anymore. Before I dive into this emotional roller coaster, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. If you've ever struggled with family boundaries, hit that subscribe button. Trust me, you'll want to hear how this ends. Growing up in suburban Minneapolis, the differences in how my parents treated me versus my brother Austin were impossible to miss. With our 6-year age gap, I became the designated responsible one, while Austin received endless second chances. My mom, Lisa, an elementary school teacher with a soft spot for her baby boy, established different rule sets for us from day one. While I received a strict 10 o'clock curfew throughout high school, Austin strolled in past midnight at 16 without consequences. Dad, Thomas, a mechanical engineer with traditional values, assigned me a mountain of household chores while Austin's responsibilities mysteriously evaporated after token complaints. When report cards arrived, my A- in calculus prompted concerned discussions about applying myself, while Austin's string of CS and DS were dismissed with casual remarks about him being more of a hands-on learner. These double standards shaped my childhood, forcing me to develop self-reliance early. I learned to manage my own schedule, prepare for exams without reminders, and save birthday money while Austin relied on parental bailouts whenever his allowance vanished too quickly. The pattern continued into our college years, revealing itself most starkly in how our educations were funded. My parents contributed a modest amount toward my tuition, explaining that their limited savings needed to stretch for both children. I accepted this, securing a partial scholarship to Northwestern University and working 20 hours weekly at a campus coffee shop to cover remaining expenses. Meanwhile, they promised Austin a fully funded education, claiming he wouldn't manage both academics and employment. This inequity stung, but I channeled frustration into determination, refusing to let resentment derail my goals. Northwestern challenged me academically and financially, each semester a careful balancing act between classes, work shifts, and minimal social life. While friends enjoyed carefree weekends, I served espressos from 6 to noon before racing to the library. Summer breaks offered no reprieve as I secured competitive internships at financial firms, building my resume while Austin returned home for 3-month stretches of sleeping late and playing video games, his occasional retail jobs lasting weeks before he quit citing management issues. Despite obstacles, I graduated with honors and minimal student loan debt, a testament to countless early mornings and declined invitations. My career trajectory reflected this same determined approach, beginning at a mid-sized investment firm where 60-hour workweeks were standard. Starting in an entry-level position analyzing market trends, I volunteered for additional projects, seeking visibility with senior management. The strategy paid off through steady promotions, culminating in my senior financial analyst role by 29, a position normally requiring several more years to attain. This professional success translated into financial stability, allowing me to purchase a modest but well-appointed condo in Chicago's Lincoln Park neighborhood after years of disciplined saving and investment planning. Throughout these professional milestones, I developed a close friendship with co-worker Vanessa Rodriguez, whose similar background with a chronically underemployed sister gave her unique insight into my family dynamics. As we shared lunch breaks and occasional weekend brunches, Vanessa became the objective sounding board I desperately needed, offering perspective when family situations clouded my judgment. My personal life also stabilized during these years through a relationship with Kevin Mitchell, an architectural engineer whose own family featured similar expectation imbalances between siblings. Our shared experiences created an unspoken understanding about boundary setting, though neither of us had perfectly mastered this skill. We spent weekends exploring Chicago's architectural landmarks, attending jazz festivals, and hosting small dinner gatherings with friends who formed my chosen family. These connections provided balance against my blood relatives' emotional complications. My visits home decreased naturally as career demands intensified, each return highlighting the growing divergence between my path and Austin's stagnation. Holiday gatherings showcased our different trajectories in painful relief, my updates about professional certifications and retirement contributions contrasting against Austin's vague references to promising opportunities that never materialized. With each passing year, the gap between our lives widened, creating an uncomfortable dynamic nobody acknowledged directly during forced cheerful family meals. These strained interactions left me exhausted, reinforcing my decision to limit home visits to major holidays and occasional special events, a boundary my parents respected only after repeated explanations about work commitments preventing more frequent trips. Austin's post-high school journey resembled a roller coaster with mostly downward tracks. He enrolled at Minnesota State University through parental pressure rather than personal ambition, his academic trajectory crashing after just 3 semesters. Each phone call home featured new excuses, professors who had it out for him, an impossible course load, or social distractions too tempting to resist. When he dropped out, my parents expressed disappointment but quickly pivoted to silver linings, suggesting this temporary setback would help him find his true calling. What followed instead was a string of short-lived jobs, each lasting fewer months than the previous. A position at an electronics store ended after 8 weeks due to scheduling conflicts. His stint as a restaurant server concluded when management unfairly reprimanded him for tardiness. Administrative work at a car dealership vanished following disagreements with supervisors about acceptable attire. Between these brief employment periods stretched increasingly lengthy unemployment gaps, sometimes spanning several months, where Austin supposedly searched for the right opportunity. Despite unreliable income, his lifestyle reflected someone earning triple his sporadic paychecks. He leased a sleek Audi rather than purchasing a sensible used car, accumulated designer clothing during retail therapy sessions, and frequented upscale restaurants with a rotating cast of friends who disappeared when bills arrived. Credit card statements piled up unopened in his apartment, minimum payments made just frequently enough to prevent total financial collapse. His recreational habits further drained his limited resources, weekend bar outings and impulsive weekend trips creating additional financial holes. When concerned friends mentioned these spending patterns, Austin dismissed them as not understanding what networking required or claimed these expenditures were investments in his personal brand. My parents' response to this financial trajectory involved creative rationalization rather than intervention. Mom described Austin as finding himself, suggesting his 30s would magically trigger newfound responsibility. Dad occasionally expressed frustration but ultimately echoed this hands-off approach, telling relatives Austin was figuring things out at his own pace. The crisis that initiated my financial involvement arrived via phone at 11:30 on a Tuesday night. Austin's tearful voice explained his landlord had delivered an eviction notice after 3 months of unpaid rent. His utilities faced imminent disconnection, and his refrigerator contained nothing but condiment packets and expired yogurt. When I suggested he contact our parents, he claimed they were experiencing their own financial difficulties due to recent home repairs. A call to Mom confirmed this half-truth. They faced minor budget constraints, but had also grown weary of Austin's repeated financial emergencies. "You're doing so well now," Mom suggested carefully. "Maybe you could help just this once? He respects you. Coming from you, the assistance might mean more." Austin then launched his persuasion campaign, promising this situation represented his rock bottom, and that my help would kickstart genuine change. He outlined a detailed plan for securing stable employment, including interviews allegedly scheduled for the following week. His voice cracked describing how this eviction would destroy his rental history and potentially leave him homeless. Despite significant reservations, I ultimately agreed to a one-time intervention, transferring enough money to cover his rental arrears plus the current month. This decision, made from a place of compassion and family loyalty, unwittingly opened financial floodgates that would remain open for years. I initially established clear boundaries around this assistance, creating a detailed repayment plan with modest monthly contributions Austin enthusiastically accepted. We agreed he would apply to at least 5 jobs weekly and attend bi-monthly budget counseling at a nonprofit financial center. Weekly check-in calls would track his progress, ensuring accountability while providing encouragement. These carefully constructed guardrails quickly proved ineffective against Austin's talent for circumvention. Repayment dates passed without mention. My gentle reminders met with elaborate stories about delayed paychecks or unexpected expenses. Weekly job search updates transformed into creative explanations for why positions were beneath his qualifications or had toxic work environments he detected during interviews. Budget counseling sessions were attended, but their principles never implemented. Financial statements showing restaurant charges the very evenings after budgeting discussions emphasized home cooking. My frustration mounted, but confrontations proved counterproductive, resulting in Austin's wounded withdrawal or promises of immediate improvement that evaporated within days. The first year of financial assistance expanded well beyond covering back rent. When Austin secured a new apartment, I paid the security deposit and first month's rent, telling myself this fresh start would catalyze positive change. I spent hours helping redesign his resume, researching industry-specific keywords, and arranging professional formatting. When he complained about lacking interview-appropriate clothing, I purchased a versatile business wardrobe, complete with accessories suitable for various professional settings. Each investment came with renewed hope that this final piece would complete his employment puzzle. Reality followed a different pattern. Job opportunities materialized only to be rejected for increasingly trivial reasons. A position offered insufficient growth potential despite Austin's unemployment. Another featured an unbearable commute of 25 minutes. A promising retail management track contained problematic coworkers Austin detected during his single-day orientation. As these rejections accumulated, my parents' expectations regarding my financial involvement simultaneously increased. What began as emergency intervention transformed into assumed ongoing support. Their casual suggestions that I help Austin with his car insurance this month, or cover his phone bill until things stabilize, reflecting a disturbing new family dynamic where my brother's expenses had become my presumed responsibility rather than temporary assistance. What began as targeted financial aid for specific emergencies gradually morphed into comprehensive life support. Austin's aging Audi, a model notorious for expensive maintenance, suddenly became my problem when its transmission required a $4,000 repair. I can't get to interviews without reliable transportation, he reasoned, conveniently overlooking public transit options or more affordable vehicle choices. After reluctantly covering this repair, I found myself entangled in an endless cycle of automotive issues, brake replacements, sensor malfunctions, and premium oil changes, all somehow landing on my credit card. Medical expenses presented another expanding category when Austin, having neglected health insurance despite my repeated warnings, suffered a skiing accident requiring emergency room treatment and orthopedic follow-up appointments. The $7,000 bill arrived at my condo after Austin provided my address as his billing contact, a decision made without consultation. Cell phone service, internet connectivity, and utility bills transitioned to my responsibility through incremental conversations where Austin's service stood perpetually on the brink of disconnection. Each situation presented itself as temporary, a just until my next paycheck arrangement that somehow never reverted to his accountability. These larger expenses came alongside constant requests for small loans, $200 for a friend's wedding gift, $300 to repair his laptop, $150 for professional association dues that would definitely lead to job connections. None of these amounts ever returned to my bank account. References to repayment met with confused expressions as though the very concept surprised him. By the 18-month mark, a detailed spreadsheet tracking these expenses revealed a staggering total that approached $50,000, with no end in sight and certainly no reimbursement plan in effect. My parents' behavior during this period reinforced these unhealthy patterns rather than addressing the underlying dysfunction. Mom called weekly with effusive praise about my generosity, while simultaneously mentioning Austin's newest financial shortfall. "You've always been our rock," she would begin, voice warm with pride before pivoting to hints about Austin's upcoming insurance premium. Dad took a different approach, invoking family obligation through selective memory of childhood incidents. "Remember when Austin let you borrow his bike after yours was stolen? He's always been there for you too," he'd claim, conveniently forgetting this loan lasted 3 days before Austin reclaimed the bike for a friend's visit. Family gatherings evolved into uncomfortable celebrations of what they termed my success story, achievements framed primarily as resources that could benefit Austin rather than personal milestones worthy of genuine recognition. Mom referenced her church friend's daughter who bought her struggling brother a business franchise, while Dad shared articles about siblings who purchased homes for their families, creating a suffocating atmosphere of implied expectations. Subtle guilt tactics permeated these interactions, comments about families who stick together through everything, and rhetorical questions about what matters more than taking care of your own blood, serving as emotional manipulation, disguised as wisdom. Comparisons to cousins who supported parents financially or classmates who brought siblings into their successful businesses indicated their belief that family obligations superseded personal boundaries, particularly financial ones. My silent compliance, despite growing resentment, only encouraged this dynamic, my discomfort mistaken for agreement with their perspective. This expanding financial burden began significantly impacting my personal life in ways visible to everyone except my family. A romantic getaway to Puerto Rico with Kevin, planned 6 months in advance with carefully selected accommodations, required cancellation when Austin's roommate suddenly moved out, leaving him unable to cover rent alone. The kitchen renovation I'd saved toward for 2 years was indefinitely postponed after Austin's car accident depleted that dedicated account. My retirement contributions decreased for the first time since starting my career, the difference redirected to covering my brother's health insurance premiums after I insisted he obtain coverage. These sacrifices created tension with Kevin, whose patience waned with each disrupted plan and emergency family discussion. "I'm dating you, not your entire family," he noted during one particularly heated discussion after Christmas plans changed to accommodate Austin's late request for travel funds. "At some point, you need to decide if you're building our future or continually rescuing his present." My close friend Vanessa expressed concern about changes she observed in my behavior, increased cancellations of our plans, visible stress during workdays, and declining enthusiasm for professional opportunities that once excited me. Over lunch one Wednesday, she gently suggested that my support had crossed from helpful to harmful. "You look exhausted all the time now," she observed quietly. "When is the last time you did something just for yourself without calculating whether Austin might need that money?" Her question lingered uncomfortably, highlighting the psychological toll this arrangement extracted. My sleep quality deteriorated as financial anxiety invaded my subconscious, dreams featuring endless ATM withdrawals with declining balances recurring several nights weekly. Checking my bank account triggered immediate tension headaches, my brain automatically calculating how each balance might address Austin's next inevitable crisis rather than my own goals or security. Weekly therapy sessions, initially started for general stress management, increasingly centered on family dynamics and boundary difficulties. My therapist, Dr. Winters, introduced terms like emotional caretaking and financial codependence, frameworks that accurately described patterns I'd normalized despite their dysfunctional nature. Most disturbing was my gradual realization that 3 years of substantial financial support had created no meaningful improvement in Austin's situation. Despite tens of thousands of dollars invested, he remained chronically underemployed, financially irresponsible, and increasingly entitled to assistance he once requested apologetically, but now simply expected. Each fresh start funded by my savings had led to identical outcomes, suggesting that my help, rather than solving problems, merely postponed necessary consequences while enabling continued irresponsibility. My perspective shifted dramatically following a scheduled meeting with my financial advisor, Elaine Barnett, to review retirement planning projections. Her expression tightened while examining my contribution history, noting the significant decrease over the previous 36 months. "These withdrawals are concerning," she stated, indicating a pattern on her monitor. "At your current trajectory, you're potentially delaying retirement by 8 to 10 years compared to your original plan." This professional assessment quantified what I'd avoided facing. My financial future was being sacrificed for Austin's present comfort. When I reluctantly explained the situation, Elaine calculated the true cost beyond direct expenditures, including lost investment growth and compounding returns. This $65,000 in withdrawals actually represents closer to $120,000 in retirement impact when projected forward, she explained, the figure striking me physically like a sudden drop in elevation. The meeting concluded with Elaine's gentle but firm recommendation. Whatever family obligation you feel, remember that compromising your financial security won't ultimately help anyone in your family long term. Airlines instruct passengers to secure their own oxygen masks first for good reason. This conversation coincided with valuable insights from my mentor Jordan Chin, a senior director who had taken interest in my career development. During our monthly coffee meeting, I cautiously broached the topic of family financial entanglements. Jordan shared his own experience with a cousin whose gambling addiction had drained family resources for years before they implemented boundaries. Supporting someone indefinitely without requirements for change isn't actually support, he observed thoughtfully. It's subsidy for continued dysfunction. Real support involves believing someone capable of facing consequences and growing through them. His words resonated deeply, particularly his closing thought. Sometimes the kindest gift is allowing someone to experience the natural results of their choices. These professional perspectives reinforced research I had been conducting about enabling behaviors and codependence, articles and books revealing uncomfortable parallels to my situation. The resources unanimously emphasized that true assistance required boundaries and expectations, elements conspicuously absent from my arrangement with Austin. Most impactful was understanding that my continued financial rescue missions actually communicated a lack of faith in his capabilities, potentially reinforcing his self-perception as incapable of independence. The cumulative weight of these realizations had barely settled when the final catalyzing incident occurred. Austin called on a Tuesday afternoon, his tone casual despite an outrageous request. "Brittany and I are thinking about taking a trip to Cancun next month," he mentioned, referring to his girlfriend of 3 months. "There's this amazing resort package, but we'd need about $4,000 to cover everything. I could pay you back a little each month starting in the fall." The disconnect between his perception and reality struck me as almost delusional, particularly given a concerning discovery I'd made just days earlier. While helping him complete rental assistance paperwork, I'd accessed his online banking with his permission, discovering he hadn't been making rent payments despite my monthly transfers specifically designated for housing. Further investigation revealed he'd been using these funds for restaurants, online shopping, and entertainment, essentially treating my housing assistance as discretionary income. When pressed about his employment status during this call, Austin casually mentioned quitting his most recent position at an insurance office because the vibe wasn't right and his manager micromanaged too much. This departure had happened 3 weeks earlier, information he deliberately withheld during our previous conversations. Most revealing was his attitude: no anxiety about unemployment, no concern for imposing further, just absolute certainty that my financial support would continue indefinitely while he figured things out. This moment crystallized everything: the mounting financial impact, the enabling pattern, the absence of positive change despite substantial investment, and the complete lack of reciprocal respect for my sacrifices. With unexpected clarity, I recognized that continuing this arrangement would harm both of us long-term, feeding his dependency while draining my future security. This realization transformed into resolution as I developed a comprehensive exit strategy from financial entanglement. The plan included a clearly defined 3-month transition period with gradually decreasing support rather than abrupt termination. I researched affordable financial counseling programs, including a nonprofit offering sliding scale services specifically for young adults establishing independence. I compiled employment resources targeted to Austin's actual skills rather than his often inflated perception of his qualifications. Most importantly, I prepared a detailed accounting of all financial assistance provided over the previous 3 years, categorized by expense type with monthly totals, a document that would later prove crucial. My offer of continued non-monetary support remained genuine, including resume review, job search assistance, networking introductions, and weekly check-ins, maintaining our connection while changing its financial nature. After careful preparation, I invited Austin to coffee at a quiet cafe, intentionally choosing a public location to discourage potential emotional outbursts. I presented my decision directly but compassionately, explaining the transition plan while emphasizing my continued emotional support. The boundary statement I'd rehearsed emerged clearly: "I care about you deeply, which is why I need to stop contributing financially to your life." This arrangement isn't helping either of us grow into our best selves. Austin's reaction followed a predictable progression from stunned silence to aggressive deflection. "You're choosing your fancy life over family," he accused, conveniently forgetting how my fancy life had funded his basic expenses for years. His attempts at manipulation escalated from guilt, "After everything Mom and Dad did for you," to false equivalencies, "I would never abandon you like this," to outright fabrication of sacrifices he'd supposedly made on my behalf. When these tactics failed to sway my decision, his expression hardened into cold anger as he delivered what he clearly considered his nuclear option: Mom and Dad will be disgusted when they hear about this. They raised you better than to turn your back on family." I had anticipated his threat to involve our parents, but the reality still stung. Rather than engaging with this obvious attempt at triangulation, I reiterated the transition timeline, offered the counseling resources, and maintained calm despite his escalating hostility. As he stormed from the cafe, leaving his half-empty coffee cup as a fitting symbol of our interaction, I recognized the inevitable family confrontation looming ahead, a conversation 3 years overdue. The anticipated confrontation materialized faster than expected. By 8:30 that evening, 3 missed calls from Mom and a terse text from Dad requesting my immediate presence at the family home to discuss your brother's situation confirmed Austin had wasted no time sharing his selective version of events. Rather than engage in separate phone conversations that might allow misrepresentations to solidify, I responded that I would drive to Minneapolis that weekend, allowing myself 2 days to prepare emotionally and strategically for what would undoubtedly become a defining family moment. The atmosphere upon arrival at my childhood home carried unmistakable tension, Mom's typically warm greeting replaced by a brittle smile and formal offer of refreshments. The living room had been arranged for what could only be described as an intervention, the formal seating configuration reserved for serious family discussions, Austin positioned centrally on the couch between my parents, his posture projecting wounded vulnerability. Nothing about this setup suggested an open conversation. Everything indicated a predetermined narrative with me cast as the villain requiring correction. Mom initiated the discussion through tears barely contained behind her reading glasses. "We've always been proud of how responsible you are, Rebecca," she began, voice wavering for maximum emotional impact, "which makes your sudden decision all the more shocking. After everything we've done to raise caring children, I never imagined you'd become so stingy with your brother in his time of need." Dad continued seamlessly, clearly indicating they'd rehearsed this approach. "Family means supporting each other through difficult periods," he stated firmly, arm draped protectively around Austin's shoulders. "Your brother has faced challenges finding his professional path, but abandoning him financially without warning demonstrates concerning values we certainly didn't instill." Austin completed their unified front with a performance worthy of consideration for acting awards, eyes downcast while quietly adding, "I've never asked for much, just some help while I get established. I always plan to repay everything once I'm stable." The choreographed nature of their presentation might have once intimidated me into immediate compliance, but preparation and perspective had fortified my resolve. Rather than responding defensively to their accusations, I retrieved my laptop, opening the meticulously maintained spreadsheet documenting 3 years of financial support. Before we continue characterizing basic boundaries as abandonment, I'd like to review exactly what helping Austin while he gets established has actually involved, I stated calmly, connecting my computer to their television screen. The detailed accounting appeared in undeniable clarity, $67,432 transferred over 38 months, categorized by expense type with dates, amounts, and originally stated purposes. Month by month, the evidence contradicted the narrative of occasional assistance they'd constructed, showing instead comprehensive life support extending far beyond reasonable family help. Their genuine shock confirmed my suspicion that Austin had dramatically minimized his financial dependence when discussing the situation with them. Mom's hand covered her mouth as she processed the actual figures, while Dad's expression shifted from righteous indignation to confused disbelief. Austin alone appeared unsurprised, though clearly uncomfortable having this information exposed. "This can't be accurate," Mom protested weakly, the column totals undermining her attempted denial. Dad examined the figures more carefully, his analytical engineering mind processing the evidence before him. "Even if these numbers are correct," he countered, pivoting to a different justification, "you're doing extremely well in your career. This amount probably represents a small percentage of your income." This dismissal of substantial financial sacrifice ignited something within me. The emotional restraint I'd maintained throughout countless family discussions finally ruptured. "A small percentage?" I repeated incredulously. "I've postponed buying a home with my partner. I've halved my retirement contributions. I've canceled vacations, delayed medical procedures, and depleted emergency savings." Meanwhile, Austin quit his last 3 jobs without having new positions, takes luxury vacations, and hasn't made a single promised repayment. My voice remained controlled, but intensified as years of unspoken frustration surfaced. Why are my achievements viewed primarily as resources to benefit Austin? Why are his struggles always someone else's responsibility to solve? Why have you contributed virtually nothing toward his supposed temporary difficulties while expecting me to sacrifice everything? Mom interrupted defensively. We raised both of you. We spent years driving you to activities, helping with homework, but you raised us with completely different expectations. I countered. I received consequences for mistakes while Austin received excuses. I worked through college while you promised to fund his education entirely. You're continuing the same pattern, treating us as fundamentally different people, one capable of solving problems and one perpetually needing rescue. The uncomfortable truth hung heavily between us until Austin attempted redirection. This isn't about childhood. This is about you suddenly deciding I don't deserve help anymore. I turned toward him directly. You told him I suddenly withdrew support? Did you mention the 3-month transition plan I offered? The financial counseling resources? My continued offers of non-financial assistance? Or how you've been using rent money for restaurants and shopping while asking for more? His silence answered more eloquently than words could have. The confrontation intensified when Mom suggested Kevin must be behind my sudden heartlessness, insinuating my relationship had corrupted family loyalty. This accusation crossed a boundary too significant to ignore. Kevin has watched me sacrifice our future to fund Austin's present for 3 years without complaint, I stated firmly. He supported my choices even when they directly disadvantaged him. He's shown more concern for my well-being than anyone in this room has demonstrated in years. Don't blame him for my realization that this situation is unhealthy for everyone involved. The emotional dam fully breached. I detailed sacrificed opportunities and delayed dreams while supporting Austin's lifestyle, the home down payment fund depleted by his car repairs, promotion opportunities missed due to stress-related performance issues, the engagement ring Kevin and I had selected but couldn't purchase, while covering Austin's mounting expenses. Have any of you considered what this extended rescue mission has cost me beyond dollars? I asked, tears finally emerging despite my determination to remain composed. Or questioned why Austin's situation hasn't improved despite enormous financial intervention. Or wondered what message we send by treating him as perpetually incapable of adult responsibilities. The silence following these questions contained the first genuine reflection I'd witnessed during the entire confrontation. Dad's defensive posture slightly relaxed, his expression suggesting uncomfortable recognition of patterns previously ignored. Mom's tears seemed less performative and more contemplative, perhaps connecting with maternal intuition long suppressed beneath enabling behaviors. Austin alone maintained rigid resistance, physically distancing himself from our parents as their unified front showed initial fractures. The culminating moment arrived unexpectedly through Dad's quiet question. What exactly did you mean about using rent money for other purposes? He asked Austin directly, his tone indicating dawning awareness that he'd received incomplete information. Austin's evasive response and blame-shifting regarding temporary reallocation of funds failed to convince, particularly when contrasted with my documented record of consistent housing payments spanning years. This discrepancy cracked the foundation of their intervention narrative, introducing doubt where certainty had previously reigned. I seized this opening to present my position with absolute clarity. My financial support ends in 3 months, following the transition plan I've already communicated. I'll continue offering job search assistance, resume help, and emotional support, but the direct payments stop. This isn't abandonment. It's believing Austin capable of adult independence, something our current arrangement actively prevents. Mom attempted one final emotional appeal, suggesting continued support with better communication would resolve everything. Dad followed with veiled warnings about how this decision might permanently affect family relationships, the implicit threat revealing how thoroughly financial assistance had become conflated with familial love in their perspective. With remarkable clarity, I recognized the manipulation techniques that had previously controlled my decisions, their effectiveness neutralized by awareness and preparation. Rising from the uncomfortable armchair that had witnessed countless family discussions where my perspective received perfunctory acknowledgement at best, I delivered my closing statement. I love all of you, which is precisely why this pattern needs to end. Real love means wanting someone's growth more than their temporary comfort. I'll be available when you're ready to discuss building a healthier family dynamic. Until then, my decision stands. Their attempts to prolong the conversation through various emotional tactics, Mom's intensified tears, Dad's authoritative objections, Austin's alternating between accusatory anger and wounded suffering, failed to delay my departure. The drive back to Chicago unfolded through alternating waves of grief and liberation, mourning the family relationship I'd wished for while celebrating the boundaries, now firmly established. Kevin's supportive presence awaited at my condo, his understanding requiring no detailed explanation of a confrontation he'd helped me prepare for through countless discussions. That night marked the first truly restful sleep I'd experienced in months, uninterrupted by anxiety about financial decimation or family obligation, a small but significant victory in the longer healing journey ahead. The immediate aftermath resembled the aftermath of a significant storm, destruction visible everywhere, yet containing potential for necessary rebuilding once the debris cleared. My phone accumulated notifications like falling leaves in October, messages ranging from Austin's vitriolic accusations to Mom's emotional appeals to Dad's attempts at negotiating compromises to my original position. These communications revealed their continued inability to accept my decision as final, each approach aimed at eroding boundaries rather than respecting them. I responded minimally, reiterating my position while declining engagement with manipulative tactics, a strategy my therapist had recommended for maintaining boundaries while avoiding unnecessary conflict. Kevin proved invaluable during this turbulent period, providing both emotional support and practical perspective whenever I questioned my decision. They're responding to the change, not the boundary itself, he reminded me during particularly difficult moments. Any significant shift in family dynamics causes resistance, even when the change is ultimately healthy. Vanessa similarly reinforced my resolve through regular check-ins and impromptu coffee dates when family pressure intensified. Notice they're fighting so hard against your boundary precisely because it's necessary, she observed wisely. If this was actually an unreasonable position, they would need such extreme measures to combat it. Austin's financial reality manifested quickly without my safety net. Within 6 weeks, his apartment manager contacted my parents regarding mounting late fees and potential eviction proceedings. His previously manageable car payments became suddenly problematic without my supplementary contributions. Credit card minimum payments went unmade, triggering penalty rates and collection notices. Each crisis prompted renewed pressure on me to temporarily resume support, requests I consistently declined while offering non-financial assistance instead. The turning point arrived when Austin's landlord finally executed the eviction notice after months of partial payments and broken promises. With no friends willing to accommodate his indefinite couch surfing and roommates rejecting his rental history, Austin reluctantly accepted my parents' offer to move into their suburban home, a significant pride sacrifice for someone who had frequently described their neighborhood as boring and suffocating during previous conversations. This development forced my parents into their first direct experience managing Austin's financial dependence rather than outsourcing this responsibility to me. Their initial approach mirrored their previous enabling patterns, covering his outstanding bills, providing spending money for essentials, and accepting elaborate excuses for unemployment. This honeymoon period ended abruptly when Dad discovered unauthorized charges on his credit card from online gaming purchases Austin had made without permission. Further investigation revealed concerning patterns my parents had previously dismissed as exaggerations on my part: gambling activity, payday loans with exorbitant interest rates, and unpaid personal debts to former friends now threatening legal action. Mom's distressed call came late one Tuesday evening, her voice lacking the manipulative emotional overtones of previous conversations. "I think we may have misunderstood some things," she admitted carefully, the understatement almost comical given the circumstances. "Austin's financial situation seems more complicated than we realize." This subtle acknowledgement represented the first crack in their unified defense of Austin's behavior, a small but significant shift in perspective. My own journey during this separation period involved processing complex emotions through weekly therapy sessions with Dr. Winters. The guilt surrounding my decision gradually diminished as we unpacked family patterns established throughout childhood. "Your financial support became their outsourced parenting," she observed during one particularly insightful session. "By taking responsibility for Austin's consequences, you inadvertently reinforced your parents' belief that different standards applied to each of you. Financial recovery progressed steadily as redirected funds replenished depleted accounts. My retirement contributions returned to previous levels, emergency savings gradually rebuilt, and the home purchase fund Kevin and I had abandoned slowly regenerated through disciplined monthly transfers. These tangible improvements manifested alongside less quantifiable but equally important emotional recovery, decreased anxiety, improved sleep quality, and renewed professional enthusiasm. My relationship with Kevin strengthened through this challenging period, his unwavering support during family conflict demonstrating reliability I'd previously doubted possible within family dynamics. Our conversations about future plans resumed, without the perpetual caveat of assuming Austin doesn't need anything, a freedom neither of us had fully appreciated until experiencing its absence. Friendships neglected during years of family crisis management gradually rekindled through intentional effort and genuine availability. Weekend brunches with Vanessa evolved from crisis debriefing sessions into genuine enjoyment of each other's company. Cooking classes I'd postponed for years finally enter my schedule, providing creative satisfaction entirely separate from family concerns. The first tentative attempts at family reconciliation arrived predictably through indirect channels. Austin sent a lengthy email 3 months into our estrangement, ostensibly apologizing while simultaneously blaming me for destroying his life through withdrawn support. The message concluded with thinly veiled suggestions about resuming financial assistance, confirming his non-comprehension of the fundamental boundary I'd established. Mom's approach featured passive-aggressive holiday invitation language. "We're gathering as a family, if you still consider yourself part of it." Emotional manipulation techniques instantly recognizable from years of exposure. Dad attempted negotiation, suggesting I resume partial support, while Austin completed certification programs that would allegedly secure his financial independence, essentially requesting modified continuation of the previous arrangement. I maintained steady response to these varied approaches, consistently offering emotional availability while firmly declining financial re-engagement. "I'm happy to attend family gatherings, offer job search assistance, or discuss any topic unrelated to financial support," became my measured reply regardless of their approach angle. This consistent boundary enforcement gradually communicated my seriousness more effectively than any explanation could have achieved. The first significant breakthrough emerged unexpectedly from Mom, whose call one Saturday morning carried a distinctly different tone than previous communications. Rather than making demands or applying guilt, she asked genuine questions about strategies for motivating Austin's job search after multiple missed interviews. "We've tried everything we know to do," she admitted with unprecedented vulnerability. "Maybe you were right about some things all along." This conversation, while brief and tentative, represented the first authentic exchange we'd shared regarding Austin's situation without manipulation or hidden agendas, a small seedling of potential family healing emerging from previously barren ground. 3 months of minimal contact allowed necessary perspective to develop for everyone involved. The absence of my financial support created unavoidable reality confrontation for both Austin and my parents, a process painful yet ultimately productive. Their participation in a financial counseling session through a local community center provided professional confirmation of patterns I'd identified, enabling behaviors, unrealistic expectations, and misaligned consequences that perpetuated dependency rather than fostering independence. Their counselor Marianne offered frameworks disturbingly similar to those my therapist had provided months earlier, validation that arrived too late to prevent family rupture, but perhaps timely enough to facilitate healing. Austin's genuine rock bottom moment unfolded when my parents implemented household contribution requirements following his third missed job interview. His initial tantrum about betrayal and conditional love failed to produce the capitulation such tactics had previously guaranteed. Faced with potential homelessness without my safety net or continued parental enabling, he reluctantly accepted a warehouse position significantly below his perceived qualification level, beginning the authentic adult independence journey he'd successfully avoided for years. The first family dinner following this extended separation carried palpable tension but also genuine openness previously absent from our interactions. Rather than performative harmony masking unresolved conflicts, we engaged in halting but honest conversation about difficult topics, enabling patterns, different standards of accountability, and unspoken expectations that had damaged relationships. Mom's acknowledgement that they'd perhaps treated us differently throughout childhood represented monumental growth in self-awareness, despite the qualification betraying continued resistance to complete responsibility acceptance. Dad's recognition that his traditional values had sometimes translated into gender-based expectation differences similarly acknowledged previously defended patterns, opening possibilities for healthier future dynamics. Austin's participation in this conversation fluctuated between defensive withdrawal and reluctant engagement, his journey toward accountability obviously in earliest stages compared to our parents' progress. Nevertheless, his simple statement, "I probably relied on you too much," delivered without accompanying excuses or deflections, indicated nascent awareness previously absent from our interactions. This gathering established no magical resolution to entrenched family patterns, but its authentic communication represented tremendous improvement over previous performance-based interactions where real issues remained deliberately unaddressed. Austin's path toward independence progressed in uneven but measurable increments. His enrollment in a vocational certification program for logistics management, funded through his own earnings rather than parental or sibling contribution, demonstrated unprecedented personal investment in career development. His consistent attendance at his warehouse position, while occasionally punctuated by complaints about supervisors or working conditions, represented substantial improvement from his previous employment pattern of rapid resignation following minor frustrations. Most significantly, his development of basic budgeting skills through ongoing financial counseling enabled modest but consistent bill management without crisis intervention. His first apartment security deposit, saved through brown bag lunches and eliminated streaming services, became a genuine achievement celebrated without financial gifts undermining the accomplishment. The apology Austin eventually offered arrived not through grand gestures or emotional performances, but through consistent behavioral change and one quiet conversation during a shared coffee break. "I took advantage of your generosity for years," he acknowledged simply. "You were trying to help, but I used that help to avoid growing up. I'm sorry for making you carry what should have been my responsibility." This straightforward acknowledgement without qualification or deflection meant more than elaborate apologies could have conveyed, its sincerity evidenced through continued efforts toward independence rather than temporary behavior modification aimed at renewed financial access. My own healing journey involved reclaiming financial security deliberately sacrificed during years of support. My retirement planning with Elaine returned to appropriate trajectories, investment accounts gradually recovering previous losses. Home purchase plans with Kevin resumed with adjusted timelines, property viewing scheduled for spring representing concrete progress toward our shared future rather than indefinitely delayed dreams. Our engagement, formalized with a ring selected together and purchased through reconstructed savings, symbolized commitment to building boundaries respecting partnership unlike my family's enmeshed dynamics. Professional opportunities previously declined due to family emergency management returned through renewed focus and engagement, a promotion to investment team director arriving approximately 9 months following my boundary establishment. Perhaps most significantly, my transformed relationship with parents gradually evolved from superficial pleasantries interspersed with manipulation attempts to authentic connection based on mutual respect rather than financial exchange. Weekend visits no longer featured subtle Austin-related funding requests, but instead included genuine interest in my professional developments and relationship milestones. Holiday gatherings, while occasionally containing awkward moments when old patterns briefly resurfaced, maintained healthier dynamics through consistent boundary enforcement and acknowledgement of previous dysfunction. The wisdom gained through this painful journey crystallized into lessons I've carried forward into every relationship since. I recognize that genuine love sometimes requires allowing natural consequences rather than perpetual rescue, particularly when repeated intervention prevents necessary growth. I understood that enabling behaviors, despite compassionate motivation, ultimately communicate lack of confidence in someone's capabilities while creating unhealthy dependency. Financial entanglement, especially when unequally distributed and inadequately acknowledged, inevitably damages relationships more significantly than temporary discomfort from appropriate boundaries. Most importantly, I learned that authentic connection requires honesty about limitations, expectations, and capabilities, elements completely absent from our family's previous interaction model. The transformed family dynamic remains imperfect, occasional setbacks, and communication failures inevitable given our entrenched history. However, the fundamental shift from financial dependency to relationship authenticity has preserved connections that would have otherwise collapsed under resentment's weight. Austin continues his development journey, employment stability gradually improving alongside financial management skills. My parents navigate retirement with realistic expectations rather than assumptions about children's financial responsibility. Kevin and I plan our wedding without calculating Austin-related contingency funds, freedom previously unimaginable within our relationship. Have you ever had to establish difficult boundaries with family members who took your generosity for granted? Share your experience in the comments. Your story might help someone struggling with similar challenges right now. If this resonated with you, please hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up so others facing family financial entanglement can find guidance. Remember that establishing healthy boundaries isn't selfish. It's often the most loving choice for everyone involved, even when it doesn't feel that way initially. Thank you for listening to my journey, and I hope it provides perspective or validation for whatever challenging family situation you might be navigating. Sometimes the hardest decisions lead to the healthiest outcomes, even when the path between feels impossible to traverse.